Dr. Isabella Romano stared at the holographic display floating before her, fighting the urge to throw her coffee mug across the gleaming laboratory of the International Space Station horizon. The data couldn't be right. She'd run the tests 37 times over the past week, and each result was more impossible than the last. Kai, run the cellular density analysis again, she commanded the station's AI, her dark eyes fixed on the shifting numbers. And this time, compare it against all known species in the galactic database. Analyzing, Dr. Romano, Kai's smooth voice responded. This will be the 38th iteration of this test sequence. I'm aware of that, thank you, Isabella muttered, pushing a strand of graying hair behind her ear. After 20 years as Earth's leading xenobiologist, she thought she'd seen everything. First contact had happened 5 years ago, and she'd been at the forefront of studying alien physiologies ever since. But this was different. The holographic display flickered, and new data streams appeared, showing comparative analyses between human tissue samples and those of the 17 known spacefaring species. The results were the same as before. Analysis complete, Kai announced. Human cellular density and regenerative capabilities exceed all known species by an average factor of 7.3. Additional note, human pain threshold and environmental adaptability indexes are also significantly higher than galactic standards. Isabella sank into her chair, the station's artificial gravity suddenly feeling heavier than usual. It doesn't make sense, Kai. We evolved on a relatively peaceful planet with moderate gravity and reasonable radiation levels. We should be soft. Yet the data suggests otherwise, Doctor. Would you like me to contact the Galactic Science Council? Before Isabella could respond, Dr. Raxon Telvor, her Centaurian colleague, floated into the lab, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with excitement. Dr. Romano. You need to see this. The maintenance crew is doing repairs on the station's outer hull, and well, you should just watch. Isabella pulled up the external camera feed. 2 figures in spacewalk suits were working on a damaged panel, their movements precise despite the challenging conditions. As she watched, one of the workers accidentally touched an exposed power coupling. The surge would have instantly killed most species, but the worker merely jerked back, shook their hand, and continued working. Did they just? Isabella's voice trailed off. Take enough voltage to power a small city? Yes, Raxon's patches flickered in patterns that indicated both awe and concern. They filed it as a minor workplace incident. Requested a new pair of gloves because, and I quote, these ones are a bit crispy now. Isabella pulled up the incident report. The worker, James Patterson, had added a note, might want to put a warning sign there. Tingles more than my mother-in-law's Christmas fruitcake. Raxon, Isabella said slowly, how many similar incidents have we had since the station opened? The Centaurian's patches shifted to a thoughtful purple. I've documented 47 events that should have been fatal to most species. The humans involved reported them as minor inconveniences. Last week, a researcher in Lab 6 was exposed to enough radiation to kill a Kraxan war beast. She complained about having to reschedule her tennis match. Isabella turned back to her data. We've been looking at this all wrong. We've been so focused on proving ourselves worthy of joining the galactic community that we never stopped to consider, what if we're too qualified? What do you mean? Look at these numbers. Our skin isn't just tough, it's practically living armor. Our bones don't just break and heal, they come back stronger. We can survive in environments that would kill most species instantly. And the most incredible part? We don't even realize how extraordinary this is. The implications were starting to sink in. Humans hadn't evolved to be soft creatures who needed protection. They'd evolved to be virtually indestructible by galactic standards, and they'd done it so gradually they thought it was normal. Kai, Isabella called out, send a priority message to the Galactic Science Council. Mark it urgent. Message parameters. Isabella took a deep breath. Title, urgent reclassification required, human species. Body, preliminary studies indicate significant error in initial human classification. Request immediate review of new data. Note, current safety protocols designed to protect humans may be unnecessarily restrictive. Addendum, humans are not fragile. We never were. As she sent the message, Isabella couldn't help but smile at the irony. The galaxy had been so worried about protecting humanity, they never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, everyone else needed protection from them. Dr. Romano, Raxon said quietly, his patches now pulsing with a mix of colors she'd never seen before, what do you think this means for human integration into the galactic community? Isabella looked out the station's window at Earth below, beautiful and blue and home to a species that had somehow evolved to be virtually indestructible without even noticing. I think, my friend, it means we're about to turn the galaxy's understanding of evolution on its head. And I think some species are going to be very, very nervous about that. The message to the Galactic Science Council would arrive in approximately 6 hours. Isabella had a feeling those 6 hours might be the last quiet moments the galaxy would know for quite some time. As if to prove her point, an alert flashed across her screen, another, minor, incident report from the maintenance crew. Walked into a force field, she read aloud, felt like walking through a soap bubble. Might need recalibration. She looked at Raxon, whose patches had turned a pale shade of shock. See what I mean? The Valdorian testing facility was the most advanced research complex in the known galaxy. Its gleaming obsidian towers stretched toward the violet sky of Valder Prime, designed to intimidate and impress. Today, however, the facility's staff was the one feeling intimidated. Captain Marcus Henderson of the Earth Space Force stood in the center of the main testing chamber, casually sipping from a water bottle. He'd volunteered for what the Valdorians called species capability assessment, though the growing crowd of alien scientists suggested this was anything but routine. High Admiral Zextra, the facility's director, observed from behind triple-reinforced quantum glass. Her crystalline form sparkled with anxiety as she addressed Dr. Romano. Your Captain Henderson understands the risks. Isabella nodded, though she couldn't quite hide her smile. He said something about it being just another Monday. I'm starting to think that phrase means something different to humans than we thought. The first test had been scheduled to begin an hour ago, but the Valdorian Safety Committee was still arguing about protocols. They'd never tested a species without at least 17 layers of protective shielding. Henderson had walked in wearing standard-issue Earth Force workout clothes and asked if they had any coffee. Begin test sequence alpha, Zextra finally announced, her crystalline form vibrating with barely contained stress. Captain Henderson, we'll start with basic environmental tolerance. Sure thing, Henderson replied, stretching as if preparing for a light jog. Just don't make it too boring. I've got a vid call with my daughter later about her science project. The chamber's environment began to shift. First, they doubled the gravity. Henderson didn't seem to notice. They tripled it. He yawned. When they hit 10 times Earth standard gravity, he finally commented. Oh, this is nice, he said, doing a few squats. Great for core strength. We should get one of these chambers on the horizon. Isabella watched the Valdorian scientists' reactions with growing amusement. Their crystalline forms were vibrating at frequencies she hadn't thought possible. One junior researcher had to be escorted out when Henderson started doing push-ups under 15 times Earth gravity. Moving to temperature extremes, Zextra announced, her voice higher than usual. The chamber temperature plummeted to near absolute zero. Henderson put his hands in his pockets. Bit chilly, he commented. Reminds me of winter in Minnesota. They raised the temperature to levels that would melt lead. Henderson took off his jacket. Now it's like summer in Phoenix. Got any sunscreen? By the time they reached the radiation tests, half the Valdorian science team was in medical observation for stress-related crystal fractures. Henderson had begun doing paperwork during the tests, claiming he might as well be productive. Is he filling out his tax returns? One scientist asked in disbelief as Henderson survived radiation levels that would sterilize most planets. Performance review forms, actually, Isabella corrected. He says they're due next week. The breaking point came during the pressure testing. They'd subjected Henderson to pressures that would crush a military-grade starship. He'd used the opportunity to crack his back, sighing with relief and saying, "Been trying to get that kink out all day." "Stop. Stop everything." Zekstra's voice crackled through the comm system. The chamber returned to normal settings as she turned to Isabella, her crystalline form practically strobing with agitation. "Dr. Romano, what are humans?" Isabella considered the question carefully. "We're just people, Admiral. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways every day. We adapted. We survived. We thrived. And then we got bored and invented extreme sports." "Extreme sports? Oh yes. Would you like to see the videos of human recreational activities? I have quite a collection. There's this thing called free solo climbing that's particularly interesting." No. The word came from every Valdorian scientist simultaneously. Several of them had developed stress fractures just from the testing they'd witnessed. Henderson emerged from the chamber, checking his watch. "Are we done?" "Only I've got that call with Sophie about her science project. She's trying to recreate the Earth's core conditions in her school lab. Kids, you know how they are." A junior scientist fainted, their crystalline form chiming as it hit the floor. "Perhaps," Isabella suggested gently, "we should discuss integration protocols that don't involve treating humans like we're made of glass." Zekstra's form had taken on a pale, stressed hue. "Integration protocols? Dr. Romano, we need to completely restructure galactic safety standards. Do you realize what this means? That we've been unnecessarily bubble-wrapped for the past 5 years. Yes, we noticed. Though the bubble wrap is fun to pop. Fun to, never mind. I don't want to know." Zekstra turned to her staff. "Send the data to the Galactic Council. Priority level maximum. And someone please explain to me how humans invented faster-than-light travel before they realized they were practically invulnerable." "Oh, that's easy," Henderson chimed in, still checking his messages. "We needed to get to places faster so we could find new ways to challenge ourselves. Speaking of which, is anyone up for some rock climbing later? I noticed some interesting formations on the way in." The room emptied so quickly it created a small sonic boom. Later, in the facility's observation lounge, Isabella and Henderson watched the Triple Sons of Valder Prime set while waiting for his call with Sophie. The Valdorian scientists had insisted on maintaining a safe distance of at least 50 meters from any humans. "You enjoyed that, didn't you?" Isabella accused, though she was smiling. Henderson shrugged. "Maybe a little. But honestly, I'm more worried about Sophie's science project. Last time she tried to recreate stellar conditions, we had to repaint the garage. You're not concerned about how the galaxy will react to this? Finding out that humans are basically walking tanks? Should I be? We're still us. We still create art, write poetry, fall in love, and cry at sad movies. We just happen to be really hard to kill." His phone chimed. "Speaking of hard to kill, that's Sophie. Want to watch her attempt to make a miniature star?" As Isabella watched Henderson proudly chat with his daughter about the proper containment protocols for artificial fusion, she realized something important. The galaxy wasn't just going to have to adjust to human physical resilience, they were going to have to come to terms with the fact that the most durable species in known space spent most of its time pursuing activities that should, by all rights, kill them. Somewhere in the facility, a Valdorian scientist was probably having a breakdown over the fact that humans had invented bungee jumping. Isabella made a mental note not to mention skydiving. At least not until the galaxy had time to process the current revelations. Henderson ended his call, beaming with pride. She's figured out how to stabilize the reaction using household materials. Isn't she brilliant? Absolutely terrifying, Isabella agreed. Want to go show the Valdorians how humans play volleyball? Only if we use the high-gravity chamber. Otherwise, what's the point? The distant sound of crystalline being stress-fracturing echoed through the facility. The galaxy, Isabella realized, had no idea what it was in for. And honestly, that was probably for the best. The warning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked like a panic attack in progress. Representatives from 17 species filled the Grand Chamber on Nexus Station, their various forms of agitation creating a symphony of nervous energy. The crystalline Valdorians were vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter their ceremonial armor. The gaseous Nexarians had condensed into worried little clouds. Even the normally stoic Zenthari were clicking their mandibles in distress. Chancellor Vex of the Galactic Council, a towering entity of pure energy contained in an environmental suit, called for order. The reports from the Valdorian testing facility have been verified. We must discuss the human situation. Ambassador Richard Chen, Earth's first representative to the Council, sat calmly in his designated spot, doing a crossword puzzle. He'd been waiting for 3 hours while various species had panic attacks about human durability. He was starting to wish he'd brought snacks. They don't even wear protective fields. A Nexarian representative wailed, their gaseous form swirling in distress. We saw one of them fix a quantum drive wearing nothing but what they call a t-shirt. That's not the worst part, a Valdorian scientist interjected, still traumatized from the testing facility incidents. They have recreational activities called extreme sports. I watched documentation of something called base jumping. They throw themselves off cliffs. For fun. Ambassador Chen looked up from his puzzle. 7 letters, dangerous activity for enjoyment. Oh, that's perfect, skydive. He filled in the answer, ignoring the collective shudder that ran through the chamber. Meanwhile, in a less public part of Nexus Station, Dr. Isabella Romano was having a very different kind of meeting. Her Centaurian colleague, Raxon, had contacted her urgently, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in patterns she'd never seen before. They're calling themselves the Protection Coalition, Raxon explained, his patches shifting through worried colors. Several species have secretly banded together. They believe humanity is too dangerous to remain unrestricted. Isabella set down her coffee cup, frowning. Restricted how? They're developing something called the Human Containment Protocol. They want to require all humans to wear dampening fields, limit their access to certain technologies, restrict their movement between systems. That seems like an overreaction. Isabella, Raxon's patches turned a deep, serious purple, they're scared. The Valdorian tests showed that an average human child has more physical resilience than most species' military elite. Then someone shared videos of your Olympic Games and 3 council members had to be sedated. The Olympics? Wait until they see the X Games. Please don't mention that. The point is, they're not just planning restrictions. Some of the more extreme elements are suggesting preemptive measures. Isabella's expression hardened. They're planning to attack Earth? Not exactly. They want to introduce something into your atmosphere. A compound that would make humans more normal. More like other species. They want to make us vulnerable. Isabella stood up, her chair scraping against the station's floor. Have they considered what might happen if they try? Raxon's patches pulsed with anxiety. That's what I'm afraid of. Humans aren't just physically resilient. You're adaptable, creative, and when threatened. He trailed off. We get resourceful, Isabella finished. She pulled out her communicator. We need to warn Earth. And Raxon? Thank you for telling me. Where are you going? To the council chamber. I think it's time we gave them a different kind of warning. Back in the council chamber, the debate had devolved into chaos. A Zenthari representative was presenting a slideshow of human workplace accident reports, each one more incomprehensible than the last. This human was exposed to enough radiation to sterilize a small moon, the Zenthari clicked in disbelief. Their only complaint was that it turned their hair green. They thought it was, quote, kind of cool actually. Ambassador Chen had finished his crossword and was now doing Sudoku. He looked up as Isabella entered the chamber, her face set in determined lines. Esteemed members of the council, Isabella's voice cut through the chaos. I understand you're concerned about humanity's capabilities. But before you consider any rash actions, let me tell you about something we call Murphy's Law. Another human law of physics? Chancellor Vex asked warily. Not exactly. It's more of a universal truth, anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. Humans live by this principle. We plan for it. We adapt to it. We thrive on it. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. So before you consider any plans to normalize us, ask yourselves this: what happens when you try to contain a species that turns survival into an extreme sport? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. In his seat, Ambassador Chen smiled and started a new puzzle. One more thing, Isabella added. We've recently discovered that human resilience increases under pressure. Significantly. We're still not sure what our upper limits are because we keep breaking the testing equipment. Food for thought. She turned and left the chamber, leaving behind a silence heavy with realization. The Protection Coalition's plans had just hit a significant snag. How do you contain a species that treats containment as a challenge? In the corridor outside, Isabella met Raxon. His patches were cycling through colors she'd never seen before. Was that wise? He asked. Warning them so directly. Humans have another saying, Isabella replied. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Better they understand now what they're dealing with than learn the hard way. And what are they dealing with? Isabella thought about the history of her species, about all the times Earth had tried to kill them, about how they'd responded by inventing increasingly creative ways to tempt fate. A species that turned survival into an art form, she said finally. And possibly the only beings in the galaxy who see safety warnings as suggestions. Somewhere in the council chamber, someone was pulling up data on human extreme sports again. The sound of multiple species having simultaneous anxiety attacks echoed through the station. Just another day in galactic politics. The response. The first attack came on a Tuesday. The Protection Coalition, in their infinite wisdom, had decided to target humanity's furthest colony on Europa Prime. Their plan was simple: demonstrate humanity's vulnerability by successfully containing just one human settlement. They deployed their most advanced technology, atmospheric processors, to create normalizing fields that would supposedly reduce human capabilities to standard galactic levels. What they hadn't counted on was Dr. Catherine Wells, Europa Prime's chief engineer, who treated the incoming normalizing field as an interesting puzzle rather than an existential threat. Fascinating molecular structure, she commented, examining the readings while casually walking through radiation levels that would have killed most species instantly. Hey, this would make a great thesis topic for my doctoral students. The coalition forces watching through their ship's sensors were baffled. According to their readings, the normalizing field was at full strength. Wells should have been incapacitated. Instead, she was taking samples and muttering about novel applications in quantum mechanics. Perhaps we should increase the field strength, suggested Admiral Yix of the Coalition fleet, his tentacles writhing nervously. They doubled the field strength. Wells started humming. They tripled it. She began taking notes about potential energy conversion efficiency. When they quadrupled it, she finally noticed something. Oh, that's interesting, she said into her comm unit. My coffee's staying warm longer. Think we could replicate this effect in our thermal mugs? Meanwhile, in orbit, the coalition fleet was having a collective crisis of confidence. Their most advanced containment technology was being treated as a potential beverage accessory. Back on Nexus Station, Dr. Isabella Romano was briefing the Galactic Council on the situation. Ambassador Chen sat beside her, doing a particularly challenging Ken-Ken puzzle. As you can see, Isabella explained, pointing to the holographic display, the attempted containment of Europa Prime has had some unexpected results. Unexpected? Chancellor Vex's energy form flickered in agitation. They're using our containment field to improve their coffee warming technology. Yes, well, humans are quite good at adaptation. In fact, Isabella checked her tablet. Dr. Wells has already filed 3 patents based on the field's properties. She's calling it the Great Coffee Warmer Project. The coalition representatives were looking increasingly uncomfortable. One of them, Azenthari, raised a trembling appendage. But what about the secondary measures? Isabella's expression hardened. You mean the automated defense systems you deployed? The ones designed to, and I quote, restrain any resistant humans? She pulled up another holographic image. It showed a group of colony kids who had reprogrammed the defense robots to play an elaborate game of laser tag. Those defense systems now serve as the colony's recreational facility. The children are particularly fond of something they call extreme robot tag. They've added ramps. Ambassador Chen looked up from his puzzle. 8 letters, turning a setback into an advantage. Ah, adapting. He filled in the squares with a satisfied smile. The coalition's next attempt had been equally ineffective. They tried to cut off the colony's power grid, apparently unaware that humans had spent most of their history finding ways to survive without electricity. The colonists are calling it Retro Week, Isabella reported. They've organized historical reenactments, camping trips, and something called a digital detox challenge. Morale has actually improved. But, a Nexarian representative sputtered, their gaseous form condensing in confusion, they're supposed to be suffering. Oh, they're complaining, Isabella assured them. Mostly about missing their favorite entertainment shows. But they're also having contests to see who can come up with the most creative solutions to daily tasks without power. Current leader is Jennifer Martinez, who rigged up a bicycle-powered coffee maker. The council chamber erupted in confused discussions. Ambassador Chen started another puzzle. There's more, Isabella continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. Dr. Wells and her team have reverse-engineered your containment field technology. They're very excited about its potential applications in extreme sports safety equipment. They're what? The coalition representatives asked in unison. Oh yes. They're calling it Project Bounce Back. Apparently, the field's properties make it perfect for improving bungee jumping safety margins. They're already planning to market it across human space. Dr. Wells says it could revolutionize base jumping. The sound of multiple species having simultaneous anxiety attacks filled the chamber. But perhaps most importantly, Isabella's voice turned serious. You should know that humanity's response to your attempted containment has been documented. She pulled up one final holographic image. It showed social media feeds from across human space, all sharing the same message, hold my beer, Alien Edition. Would someone please explain, Chancellor Vex asked wearily, what hold my beer means? Ambassador Chen finally set aside his puzzle book. It means, he said with a smile that made several council members flinch, that you've just turned this into a challenge. And if there's one thing humans love more than coffee and extreme sports, it's proving people wrong about our limitations. Isabella nodded. The coalition's attempts to contain humanity have had an interesting effect. Instead of making humans more normal, you've inspired them to become even more creative, adaptive, and resilient. Congratulations, you've actually made us stronger. In orbit around Europa Prime, Dr. Wells was putting the finishing touches on her latest project, a containment field-enhanced skateboard park. You know, she said to her assistant, we should really send the coalition a thank you note. This is the most fun we've had since we discovered those ice caves last winter. The ones that were supposed to be too dangerous for human exploration. Exactly. Good times. She paused, looking at the latest readings from the coalition's containment field. Hey, do you think we could use this technology to make better roller coasters? The coalition's monitoring systems picked up that last conversation. 3 more ships immediately withdrew from the fleet, their crews citing severe stress-related conditions. Humanity, it seemed, had responded to attempted containment exactly as they responded to everything else, by treating it as an opportunity for innovation, adventure, and if possible, better coffee. The understanding. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 72 straight hours. Most species would have been exhausted. The human representatives were on their 15th pot of coffee and showing no signs of slowing down. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Chancellor Vex said, his energy form flickering with what might have been a headache. Not only did the containment attempts fail, but humans have now improved upon the technology, filed 147 patents, started 3 new extreme sports leagues, and organized an interplanetary coffee warming competition, Isabella finished. Dr. Wells is particularly proud of that last one. The Protection Coalition's representatives had been unusually quiet, possibly because they were still processing the video feed from Europa Prime. The colony had turned their containment protocols into a festival, complete with containment field surfing in what they called zero vulnerability parkour. Ambassador Chen was now doing a particularly complex crossword puzzle in ancient Sumerian, just to keep things interesting. But the most significant development, Isabella continued, pulling up a new holographic display, is what we discovered when we actually studied why your containment technology failed. The display showed a complex diagram of human cellular structure, with particular emphasis on what appeared to be previously unknown adaptive properties. You see, every time you tried to suppress our natural resilience, our bodies didn't just resist, they learned. Each attempt made us slightly more adaptive. It's as if millions of years of evolution had prepared us not just to survive threats, but to become stronger because of them. That's impossible, a Zenthari scientist clicked frantically. No species can actively evolve in response to immediate threats. Apparently, Ambassador Chen said without looking up from his puzzle, nobody told us that. Isabella nodded. Humans have a long history of doing impossible things, largely because we didn't know they were supposed to be impossible. We call it thinking outside the box, though in this case, it's more like thinking outside the containment field. She brought up another display, this one showing the results of the latest human capability tests. The numbers were even more impressive than before. By trying to contain us, you've actually helped us discover capabilities we didn't even know we had. Dr. Wells has a theory that our apparent invulnerability isn't just physical, it's part of our fundamental nature as a species. We don't just survive, we thrive on challenges. The council chamber was silent as this sank in. Then a small voice from the back asked, what about the coffee warming technology? Oh, that's been standardized across human space now, Isabella said cheerfully. We're calling it the Containment Field Coffee Enhancement System, or CFCES. It's improved productivity by about 300%. Chancellor Vex's energy form dimmed slightly. So let me summarize, in attempting to contain humanity, we have, 1. Made them stronger. 2. Given them new technology. 3. Inspired them to create new recreational activities. And 4. Improved their coffee. Don't forget the patents, Ambassador Chen added helpfully. The licensing fees alone should fund our space program for the next century. A Nexarian representative's gaseous form swirled in confusion. But what do we do now? How do we handle a species that gets stronger when threatened? Isabella smiled. Perhaps it's time to try a different approach. Instead of trying to contain us, why not work with us? Humanity's greatest strength isn't our physical resilience, it's our ability to turn challenges into opportunities. She gestured to the various displays showing human innovations derived from the containment technology. We don't want to conquer or dominate. We want to explore, innovate, and yes, occasionally throw ourselves off high places for fun. But everything we learn, everything we create, we're willing to share. Ambassador Chen finally set aside his puzzle book. There's an old Earth saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Though in this case, it's more like, if you can't contain them, collaborate with them. The council chamber erupted in discussion, but this time the tone was different. The fear was being replaced by curiosity, the panic by interest. Besides, Isabella added with a slight smile, we've already started planning the first Interstellar Extreme Sports Championship. Dr. Wells is designing the courses. We'd love to have other species participate, with appropriate safety measures, of course. Several council members fainted at this suggestion, but a few looked intrigued. In the end, the Galactic Council passed what became known as the Human Understanding Protocol. Its primary directive was simple: don't try to contain humans. They'll just turn it into a sport. The Protection Coalition was disbanded, though several of its members joined the newly formed Interstellar Innovation Committee, which focused on finding positive applications for humanity's unique capabilities. Dr. Wells went on to win a Galactic Science Prize for her work on adaptive technology, though she caused a minor scandal by base jumping off the award platform. The acoustics were perfect, she explained later. And humanity? They continued doing what they'd always done, facing impossible challenges, surviving things they shouldn't survive, and finding new ways to make better coffee. As Isabella liked to tell her alien colleagues, the secret to human resilience isn't that we're unbreakable. It's that we've made an art form out of bouncing back. Ambassador Chen added that last phrase to his crossword collection. It fit perfectly, 9 letters, the essence of human nature. Resilient.